So tonight I was watching the 6 o'clock news on Channel 9. I don't usually watch Channel 9, but it flicked on. And a particular article caught my eye. And that was an article about how Brisbane has some of the most expensive parking in the world. And I'm sure that many people would be outraged. But as a transport planner, secretly, I was doing a little victory dance. Yes, that's brilliant. But it brings home a really important point that maybe having really expensive parking isn't a bad thing at all. First of all, think about those ridiculously congested cities like Los Angeles, where you regularly get traffic like that. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that's an idea of hell. I'd rather not be subjected to it. One of the reasons that Brisbane doesn't have that is partly because we don't have the same level of population. One critical thing is we do have a lot of people driving, and that's why our traffic is still fairly annoying. But we don't have the same level of population as Los Angeles. Important thing to keep in mind is it's not the number of people necessarily that causes traffic congestion. It's how those people travel. And in a city like Los Angeles, it's clogged up because there's 20 million people and most of them are travelling in a car. Brisbane, 2.5 million people, most of which are travelling in a car, is still clogging our roads. But if you want to move more cars and more people in cars, you're going to get terrible roads like that again. And I don't know about you, but if you're the same sort of person that gets really pissed off when someone tries to tear down a heritage building, chances are you're also going to get annoyed when they build a big road like that. Before you launch into thinking that I hate cars and I want to declare war on the motor vehicle, first of all, I only want to declare war on the SUV. But second of all, I actually am a car enthusiast, hence the shirt. I appreciate driving, and for me, a great weekend often involves going for a nice Sunday drive on a quiet country road. My idea of terrible motoring, however, is what most people are doing every single day, and that is driving on a already congested road into a major centre, bumper-to-bumper traffic. I can't stand that. I also hate parking in car parks where people who, perhaps with the best will in the world, aren't the best drivers, can't park, and perhaps whilst not paying attention, will push their trolley into your vehicle. I can't stand that. So the two things that I would love to see happen are less people driving to and from work in peak hour, because that's causing so much extra congestion for things that, first of all, are really rubbish bits of motoring, and second of all, in many cases can be avoided by, if I get these ready, using one of these, one of those, or even one of these. And I don't know about you, but for me, if I had the choice between that or that, I think the ferry, the bus, or the train, as I previously showed you, are going to win out. The truth is, those people have still got to get to work. They've still got to get to that destination. And that doesn't necessarily change whether they do that in their own private vehicle, where it's one or two people in a vehicle that takes up 20 square metres of space on them, or whether that's one seat on a bus, or a train, or a ferry, or if you're on the Gold Coast, a tram. And heaven forbid, I'm about to suggest something so radical, cycling. There are cities who've done that extremely well. One of the things that's worked so well in countries like the Netherlands is people cycle to commute. People cycle casually. They get their groceries by bicycle. And it's not just the hills that make it work, or the lack thereof, I should say. The reason people cycle in the Netherlands is also because it's a safe environment. And there's much more separation. The cities are smaller streets, and it works beautifully. People do cycle to commute rather than drive everywhere, and it creates fitter, healthier people, happier people. I think what this does prove is we should be thinking more critically about transport and not just doing the status quo, what we've always done, building more roads and more car spaces and more cars, because the truth is, you're going to whinge when it ends up looking like this. And you're going to come complaining to city planners, people like myself, who've listened to what the public demanded. So, I think in terms of congestion busting, one of these is going to be a better bet. And on that, I do welcome the Queensland Government's decision that during COVID-19, even when passenger numbers on public transport are down, to actually increase the number of services on certain peak services for key busy transport routes, and trains as well as buses. So I think that's a great initiative, and I'd like to see more of that. And I think we also need to look fundamentally at how that system operates, particularly in areas which don't receive much public transport service now, or there's a barrier to entry like a long walk to the train or a long walk to the bus stop, and how we can better integrate our current local networks to service those needs. So a bit of food for thought. When you see an article on mainstream news talking about how bad expensive parking is for our city, just think there might actually be an upside in it. And I think that Brisbane having such expensive parking could be one of the reasons why we're not a city that looks like this. And I think for that, we should thank our lucky stars and maybe even reconsider a little bit about how you travel. I certainly know if I'm going into town or getting the groceries where possible, I'm going to walk and I'm going to use public transport so that I don't get stuck in traffic like that. So I'd like to say thank you again for joining me on Talking Planning. I hope you found today's video interesting. I appreciate the fact that you've spent a few minutes of your time listening to a little bit of an alternative viewpoint, and thanks for joining me today, and see you again soon.